Welcome to the Crafty Mini and the next episode of the October Nightmare. So for this one, I've been building up this lore on the BPD, and for this organisation I imagine that in some of the hallways and corridors and things of this imaginary government facility there's going to be like various minor artefacts that don't need security, that are just on show. And you know, I've got a bit of a backstory and things to them. People have collected over the years or donated to the actual facility. So that's what we're going to make in this one. So I started off with, I've got a bit of EVA, black EVA foam, just for the backing of this frame, and then a simple frame that's a bit deeper than a normal picture frame, and I got from Hobbycraft for a couple of quid. And you can see there it's fully painted black, which I've done, and then I've just measured a piece of paper for the interior, folded it over. So I've got a good idea of like what my working space is, and then on here I'm just going to sketch some random things and some ideas for what I want actually inside this display box. So I'm going to speed up the footage for time, but I'm going to put the entirety of the sketching process in, just so you can see my sort of workings. I've got this idea, so it's going to be multiple little objects on the display. I'm not quite sure what they are at the moment. I do like the idea of the tuft. They're going to have some labels in, like we did with the Wizards box project last month. So just want to show the full workings out, so you can see, you know, there's things obviously I put on here that I'm not going to do, and I don't end up doing. There's things that I like, things that I dislike, but I always keep my sketches in a little folder, because if there's something on here that might spark some interest in a future project, and I think, well, actually I'll do that instead. So always keep hold of your sketches and things for ideas, because you never know. It could end up sparking your interest, and you can do something else with it later on. And during the sketching process, I'm working things out, I eventually settle on a couple of artefacts. So I end up with an eye, a tooth, some form of some creature's tentacle, and like a shaving of skin that have got these weird tattoos on them. And this, the next set of videos now is how we're going to make each of those things, paint them up and whatnot, and go from there. So starting with the eye, I'm back to my Super Sculpey because I've used all the Fimo up now, thank God, because I really didn't enjoy using that clay. But the Super Sculpey, much better, a lot firmer. You know, needs a lot more work to get it going, but once it's there, it holds the detail much better. So I knew I wanted like a deep iris, because I'm going to build up layers with UV resin in this to give it like a fishbowl effect, because I want this to be the eye of a deep one, which for those of you who follow Lovecraft lore will know that, yeah, the deep ones are a very famous creature that are used, seen quite a bit in the Lovecraftian lore and the literature. Next up is I wanted some form of tooth, sort of like a megalodon tooth, but I've got a cool idea for a name for it, which you'll see later on, and again with the backstory and things, because we're doing more of those for the October Nightmare. But yeah, just wanted like a big chunky tooth. You can do some nice texture in the clay. Again, it's quite a simple piece that'll sit there in the box when it's done. Right, so for the piece of skin, so I've just rolled out some of the Super Sculpey flat and just tearing the edges, just to give it that idea that it's been shaved off, or cut off, scalped or something. You can see here, just make sure that obviously this piece of paper is the same size as the interior, make sure it fits, and I'm just putting a bit of texture on initially, and then I get out one of the rollers that I've made from Milliput. So when you see the roller in a moment, this is just Milliput that was left over from a project. I've put it onto a cocktail stick or a chopstick or something like that, and just put some holes in, and then when it dries you can use this as a roller, as you see here, and this leaves this lovely texture, which I wanted, like almost like a fish scale type thing. Because the idea, this artifact is also from a deep one, because all of the items in this box will be sort of nautical and sea themed, and this is like a piece of skin from a deep one that's got these weird tattoos on with cosmological events. So for the idea of, regarding the actual tattoos on this piece of skin, so I'm just going in with a smaller ballpoint engraver, pressing in gently and going, if I have to go over a few times just to build it up so the indent shows on top of the skin. And I'm just drawing strange geometric shapes. There's no rhyme or reason, I'm not following any pattern, just something that looks a bit weird and otherworldly. And then sort of halfway down I do a wave, as if, because in my head the idea was there's something above and below the ocean, and obviously this creature, they live in the sea. And then on the bottom part of this piece of skin I've done various circles, almost as if they're like planetary alignments, with the central circle, which, looking at it, you look and you think, oh, maybe it's the sun of our solar system. And then a weird building type thing underneath with just a few dots and little scratches and marks. Again, it doesn't make actual sense to us. That's the idea behind it, because it's an artifact. It's this tattoo or something from a deep one, and it's something that they follow in their religion. So then when we look at it, it feels very strange and otherworldly. Right, so onto the tentacle now. Really easy. So it's just basically roll out a piece of clay into a sausage. Now, I've pressed in the one end because the idea this is where it's either been cut off or it's fallen off of a strange creature. And just going in with the clay shaper and adding these sort of undulations and creases that will be on the underside of the tentacle when you see when it's all folded up. And then on the outside, I just give it a bit of rough texture with the roller again. This one's really simple. When it's in the, obviously, so it'll fit in the box, I'll give it a bit of a curl just to make sure it fits. But this is really simple and easy to do. And again, this is from another strange creature that's been found, and the artifact's been donated to the BPD. Right, so after all these are baked, I'll bring them back and I'll just do like a dry fit in the actual frame. You can see here, this is the rough idea for composition. It does change slightly, but just making sure everything fits and it's deep enough. Now the eye is a little bit too tall, so I do shave the bottom of that off slightly, just to make sure it fits flush, and the piece of glass that sits on top is okay and doesn't move. Onto painting. So the eye, I'm going to be using the colour shift paint, so black gloss all over. Let that dry, and then while that's drying, we'll go on and paint all the other things, and then we'll go back to this at the end. Right, and for the tooth, so we're starting off with a light brown. I think this is a British uniform, Vallejo. Starting off with this as the base coat, and then we'll blend up to a lighter, sort of bone tooth colour. Again, really simple process. So we'll just do all the base coats on all of the pieces. Now, some of them will look a bit more brighter and garish, but they get dulled down. And I just want to show that this is a really easy way of painting things for a simple display piece. If you want to spend more time on them, by all means. But the idea is we're just picking up on all the little bits of texture that we've put in on the actual clay. Onto the skin, so this gets a olive drab all over. And again, this will be dulled down, and we'll do some tone effects on the actual skin piece itself, as if the creature had some sort of like natural patterning. And again, just a simple base coat, let it dry, and we'll go from there. Right, so onto the tentacle. This just gets Prussian blue by Vallejo all over, and we'll go in and do some slight variations in the colour, especially on the underside where we've put those little ridges in to show like the underneath of the actual tentacle itself. But the initial base coat just all over, and again, like all the other items, just let them dry and we'll go in and add details later. Right, so when it comes to the eyeball, so the outside gets multiple layers, and I have to wait in between each layer to dry, of the colour shift paints from Green Stuff World. This one's the Psychotic Illusions, which gives a nice bluey to purple. So put a coat on, let it dry, add another coat, and so on. It's had about 4 coats in total around the outside of it. And then when it comes to the centre of the actual eye, we're going to add layers of the UV resin to build up and make this sort of fisheye domed effect. So you can see there, it's already had an initial one inside. I've cured it with the UV torch, now it's going to have another one on top, and then a third one after that, and it just gives this really nice bulbous sort of shape and makes it look a bit more stranger. It's clearly not a human eye. Right, so the tooth, so it's got the khaki colour. Right, so onto the tooth, it's got the khaki colour on the base coat. So now we're going with the light bone, pop that on straight away. This covers quite nicely actually, and then go back in with the khaki and start blending where both of the colours meet, and you just wet blending on the actual tooth now, back and forth with the colours until you get a nice gradient and an effect that you want. And when that's all dry, it gets a really deep coat of brown wash all over, and then I'll just wipe down just towards the tip of the actual tooth itself so it blends in. And this just gives it a really nice effect that it's it's an old gnarly tooth from some sort of real strange sea creature. Right, and onto the skin. So the base coat's dried, so it gets a dry brush now of a lighter green on top, and then I start adding some of the bone colour I had left from the tooth and give it another coat immediately after that, and it starts to blend, as you can see here, all over. So it's all in, like, it looks like it's in patches, which is good because this is the effect that we want, because I want it as if the the creature it's from actually has like a pattern work, a camouflage that's on them. So I actually going in on a bit of the Prussian blue, and I did this dark patch in a few areas, as you can see here. And it just, when it's dry, it gives this effect that, you know, this creature had this this sort of dot pattern all over its body, and then this piece of skin's been taken off. Right, so when it comes to the actual tattoo itself, so I go in initially with a light grey, just to neaten everything up, and then it gets a final coat of a nice bronzy colour. Because I like the idea that the tattoos on these creatures aren't like ours, where it's just like a black ink, it's almost like a brand itself. And when you see the finished product, it, you know, you can see it really does pop. Right, so the tentacle, this is the dark blue base coat. So this gets a purple dry brush all over initially, just catching all the raised areas where we've put that, you know, that texture with the roller on the outer side of the tentacle. And then for the underside of the tentacle, we dry brush with a light blue, just to give it a bit of contrast for light and dark for both of the colours. And you can see it catches all those ridges that we put in on the actual clay before we baked it, and gives it a really nice effect. Right, so all the items are now finished, you can see here, and I'm just coming up with an idea of the layout that I want. I know they'll all fit in their own way, but it's a slight change from the initial sketch that I did. I'm just moving things around till I'm happy. That's it, really simple. Once I'm happy, just super glue it down. The reason I put the EV foam on the back is because this thing soaks up super glue, and it really doesn't move once it's on, which is what you want, because when this is on the wall, obviously I don't want things falling out and whatnot. So just gluing them all down now. Got the final composition, and we're going to do some labelling. Right, so for the labels, I've just planned, this is a rough idea of where they're going to be, and all this is masking tape, white masking tape that I've folded over on itself, and it's thick enough then to, when you write on with the ink, it doesn't soak it all up. So I've written out the labels and stuck them down just with super glue. And for each item, so obviously for the piece of skin, it just says a branding from a deep one skin. The tentacle is a sand flayer main tentacle from the female of the species, a sea fairy tooth, and a deep one's eye stone. Now obviously I'm not quite exactly sure what each of those items are and what they're for, but it's just cool. It adds a bit more narrative to the piece as well, which is what you want. And that's the finished piece. So yeah, really happy with this. I'm going to do a few more of these BPD sort of minor artifacts, just so I can have them on display on my wall where I paint. But thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all the support over the October Nightmare. We've only got a few episodes left, and then we're going to go back and do some normal stuff. I've got some other ideas I want to do, some sketching, some painting. I've got a few miniatures that need painting and a bust. But thank you very much for watching. Thank you for your support, and we'll see you on the next episode. Cheers.
Within the BPD facilities around the globe, there are thousands of minor artifacts on display that have been collected over the years. The headquarters in the UK holds some of the more stranger of these, from its full Deep One skeleton to the only surviving parts of a Mi-Go in existence here on Earth. All these artifacts are studied and catalogued in hopes humanity can better understand the paranormal and cosmological dangers that threaten the human race constantly. The BPD will remain to be at the forefront of these pursuits as it fights its secret war to preserve humanity.
Warning. Security breach level 8. Warning. Subject 1138 has escaped. Warning. Security breach level 8. Warning. Subject 1138 has escaped.